Well, hello, Bill Wadman.
Hello, Sandy. How have you been?
All kinds of ways. What about you?
I'm just jolly, peachy.
Peachy. That's good to hear.
Hmm.
And sometimes we start these and we comment on how long it's been since we saw each other, but I think we have now taken the biscuit for an absence for our
Well,
recording.
we
And
shall not let that happen again.
Hmm?
We shall not let that happen again.
No, but lots of stuff moves on in life, doesn't it? And things happen. I'm not in my
Yeah,
usual corner, in my usual spot.
you're in a whole new spot.
In a whole new spot. I'm not sure this will be the spot that ultimately I choose, but
Okay.
let's go for this evening.
So you get to try things out. That's even better.
Yeah. Anyway, this evening we're going to talk about resistance,
Hmm.
testing our tolerance, and finding out if, or rather, what we are resistant to, really, and whether there's resistance in things that we don't really know about ourselves, in that
Sure.
we might not realize sometimes what we're actually resistant to, but we might be obviously resistant to certain actions of others or ideas.
Or change, full stop.
Do you think that is the thing you're most resistant to? Change.
Um, I mean, in a small way, yeah. I think I'm most resistant to changing things I think I've known since I was very small. I don't want to rebuild the foundation.
Mm.
Sometimes you have to.
I mean, resistance does imply change, actually. If you think about what resistance means.
Well, something's trying to change and don't want it, you're stopping it.
Yeah, so it is about time.
Hmm.
Anyway, we're going to look at some images. This evening, I have not got my usual um,
Titling.
titles up, so I'll just tell you. It's Quentin Matsys, 1513, and of course it is The Ugly Duchess.
This is actually from 1513.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah,
This feels like an AI version. If you said, draw me an ugly person in, 16th century clothes. That's
yeah.
weird.
She's hanging in the National Gallery in London. In fact, I visited her probably a couple of months ago now. Went and
Interesting. I
saw her.
didn't know that.
But something, she's something that breeds a kind of contempt. And one might say that it's a caricature. There's lots of uh, critique written about this painting, lots of um, piecing apart its symbolism and who she might be or pretend to be or what allusions she makes. Um, but essentially, we could say that this is a woman who should know better and that we are to be repulsed by her.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Do we
So
know this
on
person actually existed?
No, I don't think so. Although, again, reading a study, someone said that she had all the hallmarks of a particular type of encephaly or something that might have meant that she, in fact, had this kind of physiognomy. But nonetheless, when we see her, are we resistant to her? And what I'm interested in us doing is looking at the kind of sliding scales of what it is we're actually resistant to, if
Yeah.
anything.
Uh,
This was
yeah.
painted by Matsis as something that was meant to almost be like cautionary. Um, we could say that it's a cautionary tale to women past a certain age to not wear revealing clothing. It could be a cautionary tale that's utterly misogynistic, a hatred of women, in that if you're ugly, don't bother, love.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Because look,
Sure.
clutching the little flower, offering her love.
Yeah. Yeah, which is I mean looking at it that way, it's a sad fable, I guess. I mean, I would also there's something about it even I made the crack about it being AI or whatever, but like that you could almost imagine that it was also something that somebody made up in order to make a point, right? You know what I mean? So I'd be resistant to its reality
Mm. Just
as
can you
well.
just explain that a little bit more?
Sure, it feels like a false caricature. It's funny because when you look back at so many portraits from back in the day, especially of, you know, some rich people, a lot of them are not particularly good looking, but these people who painted these things were often paid by these people to make these pictures. So if you're sometimes I look at them and I go, what did that person really look like? If this is the idealized version of them that they paid for, you know, uh, it's always interesting to me. Um, but this almost feels like it's a yeah, like it's like a fable almost,
Mm.
like it's false somehow.
I mean, I'm looking in myself at how um I'm not actually repulsed or resistant to the way she looks.
Okay.
But then when I approach with the intellect, I become really resistant to the artist
For having made this person immortalize them in this way?
for having the disrespect to, let's say, women
Sure.
do this. And then I look at the resistance I might have and the kind of fear I have around being rejected, because this is
Yeah.
also to me a painting of rejection, which
Yeah.
is that we're expecting this person to be rejected.
Hmm.
And that brings up all kinds of angst. And
Well, we're making that assumption though, aren't we?
we are, but I'm looking at this in a very micro way.
Hmm.
You know, I'm moving through this slowly. I think, you know, you approach it in the National Gallery, you see her. Lots of people say, there's the ugly Duchess. She's quite an iconic and recognizable face.
Hmm.
Um, but when we look at her, again, the expectation of the image is to drive us to a sort of point of repulsion.
I guess, do we know that that was the aim of the artist? It could be that this person was happy with this painting.
Well, actually, I mean, it's also sometimes paired with a facing male,
Yeah.
and as a pair, they're quite, you know, you could say it's a parody, a humorous kind of take or pastiche of ordinariness in love.
Sure.
But I think the element of the grotesque is such that we could assume that Matsis wants us to make fun of this woman rather. And I'm resistant to that.
To I guess my question is to what aim? To make the moral judgment that this person shouldn't be this way? A cautionary tale, don't end up as this person?
Yes, I mean, it's like, you know, the kind of throwaway comments that might be made. A woman walks past and is wearing a short skirt, and they also happen to be over the age of, let's say, 40 or 50,
Sure.
you know, and there's a pursing of the lips of the
Yeah.
passerby
Yeah.
who might
One of
think,
those
oh, she just can't get away with that any longer. Or,
yeah. It's
um,
there's a line from a movie that I watched years ago, and the line was spandex, it's a privilege, not a right.
hmm. But I'm curious if you have a resistance to making fun of this person.
I mean, making fun of this person wouldn't be the thing that I personally would do. That's not the direction I would go. But then again, interestingly enough, I also am, I don't know. I mean, I obviously think about my looks and stuff, but it's not something it's not on my top three list of things that I worry about, you know? So I wonder if it is also in the eye of the beholder. Um, People just see it different ways because all of these kinds of things are mirrors, right? Isn't that the classic line?
Mhm.
We sometimes reflect back our fears or our, that we're worried somehow that somebody's going to say that about us walking down the street when we're this age or something like that, right?
Well, there is a
Um,
horror, isn't there, there's a
sure,
horror to unrequited love.
sure.
That's one thing. But
Well,
there's
we're
also,
also making that assumption too, but go ahead.
no, well, I am making that assumption
Yeah,
based on how I can see the hand offering the
sure,
bud. And the disconnect between how the artist wants us to perceive a bud in the hand with the face above those kind of fulsome but older breasts.
sure.
Um, yeah, I'm a
Let me ask
bit,
you a question. When you were a kid, were you one to make fun of another kid?
no, I've never been inclined that way.
Yeah, me either. Like I don't even understand it. Like the whole picking on somebody kind of stuff. It doesn't, it's never been my thing.
Well, I mean, we talk a lot about this at home. You know, obviously I'm with young people every day, not least my own child,
Yeah.
but I'm truly shocked by how brutal young people now are with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's kind of part of why I was asking. Yeah.
always, when you and I were children, of course, there was always going to be a few nasties in a class who would pick on others or slag them off for something or pick apart what they were wearing or what they looked
Sure.
like, so on.
But
But
social
really, that,
media has multiplied that, right?
yes, it has, because I was going to say that used to be the the exception, the sad exception.
Yeah.
And now actually those children who don't behave that way are the exception.
Yep.
I mean, that's my observation.
That behavior has been normalized in some way is kind of sad.
It has, and there seems to be no compunction, no self-reflection at all in allowing a kind of escape of nastiness.
Hmm.
There doesn't seem to be any checking or self-regulation. Although I have to say also then one might consider if it's healthier to let out the thing that wants to burst forth. A lot of us suppress nasty comments.
Sure. But going home and saying, I thought Sandy's hair looked terrible today to yourself in the mirror is one thing. Saying it to Sandy is like unnecessarily cruel because then, we've all been on the downside of that, whether it's real or not. It's just sad. Do you think it's to your initial thing like a form of social control? All of this?
Well, I think that this sort of control has been used to manipulate and corral women always,
Sure.
always.
Yeah. By men and women.
Yes, but it's very female targeting, isn't it?
Yeah. Sure. But interestingly enough, the young women in my life get it a lot more from other women than they do from men, which is doubly sad.
Well, the genie's out the bottle,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of our social proclivities, our use and misuse of social media, as you've already mentioned. I mean,
I think the answer is just to get off of it.
we live in a really toxic society,
Yeah. Hmm.
but I'm going to be a bit more optimistic now. I don't see why I shouldn't love the Duchess.
No.
And I
The
wonder
Duchess
if
herself or the painting itself? Two different things.
both.
Hmm.
Then I have to check myself for my arrogance that am I loving the Duchess because I pity her? In which case, I'm just as resistant to her.
Hmm.
There's a lot in resistance, isn't there?
Uh, yeah, and a lot of it is very sort of, I think, deep, reptilian brain kind of stuff. It's,
Mm.
seeing a snake or a rat or something, right? Like, you know, it's like you don't think about it. It's just a
Well,
feeling you have. It's not a decision.
I don't know if you're prompting me to tell my rat story.
I'm just go ahead, tell the rat story.
Well, it's just in case anyone's noticed that I've got a giant thing on my chin.
Yeah.
Uh, you should see my knees, is all I'm going to say, because yesterday, no, Tuesday, taking the bins out, um, I lifted the lid of the communal big bin out the back of the apartment block, and a rat shot out. And I was so taken with fear, gripped by fear, that
Yeah.
I twizzled on my foot, still
Yeah.
holding the bins either side of me, my bin, and fell flat on my face. So the thing that came
Ugh.
down first was my knee, then second of all my chin, and then my hands.
You're
Uh,
lucky you didn't get more hurt than you did.
I mean, the
Is
rat
just
was
the one knee ripped
terrifying,
up, or are both knees ripped up, or just the one?
just the one.
It literally jumped out at you when you lifted the thing, like it was within feet of you.
Yeah,
Oh, wow. That's
I mean,
gross.
the rat, like I said, must be traumatized. Maybe the rat's having its show somewhere
Yeah.
in Ratland, talking about this situation with this giant human. I don't know. That's gone a bit ratatouille,
Yeah.
hasn't it? But
Well, yeah, but like to my point though, like the disgust that you had when that rat jumped out, that was, you know, primordial. You know, you didn't think, your body just did to avoid it.
yeah.
You know, um,
So are we saying that disgust? We are we saying that there's actually a categoric answer to this then? Where is disgust located? It is in our instinctual.
oh yeah. I mean, I think you can learn disgust.
Yes.
You know, I have disgust for, you know, bigoted people who judge people on all kinds of different, you know, identity stuff or religious stuff or, all that kind of stuff drives me up a wall. And
Yes.
I
Well,
think
I was
it's
going to say, as humans, we've become very used to training ourselves to feel disgusted by other humans.
sure. But interestingly enough, I'm disgusted by other humans who themselves have disgust for other humans. You know what I mean? Like I have disgust for the disgust in this in this case, you know.
But I mean, the
Um,
question there that's underneath, and I've put it in a lighter font
yeah.
because I want us this may be more difficult. Is I ask myself, do I enjoy disgust? There's something rather scintillating about disgust, and the feeling of it is maybe quite addictive as well.
Well, I think that there's something about I think that there's something implicit in disgust that you are in the in group and the thing you discussed is in the out group. And that is all very old school subhuman brain kind of stuff too. You know,
I mean, is
you're
disgust
accepted and they're not.
well, is disgust isolating or inclusive?
It's isolating for the disgusted, but inclusive for the disgustee. I have those right, but you know what I mean. I think the rat feels put out, but what's this picture from?
This is Oscar Carlson. It's from the Hester series.
See, it's like this is an example. It's like I can't even tell exactly what I'm looking at. You know what I mean?
The Impossible Body.
That's what it's called.
Mm. but it's a wider series. I mean, this is not wholly truthful as such.
Okay.
It's a composite.
Yes, it feels unpossible, not impossible. You know what I mean? Like it.
Yeah. But nonetheless, I mean, when looking at it and sort of poring over it, there is this rush for vision to try and make sense of what is seen.
Sure.
And in doing that with this, I do think there's a level of disgust for this body.
Oh, of course. I mean, that's also biological from the point of view of this person is wrong. We need to keep him out of the gene pool kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Like that's the origins of that, I think. Which I think might be the origins of just even your Duchess, you know.
Yeah. But to the training of disgust, again, social conditions tell us what to find attractive and what to find ugly. But I'm prompted here as if my conditions fall away even. My conditions don't rush in until after I'm already disgusted. And then actually my conditions tell me to undisgust myself because that's rude and that's not nice
Right.
and that flies in the face of everything that I hope I am as a person, which is
Right.
for the most part quite kind.
But some people will try to justify their disgust. Others will try to rationalize it. Others will try to shut it down because it's unpolite, right?
Yeah.
Which is what you're talking about. But all of those things come after, you know.
There's a lot of space quite rightly given to those people who feel marginalized, who perhaps have body differences, or
Sure.
people who are born with specific uh, body or bodily differences,
Sure.
about often the kind of citing of how it feels to be stared at, pointed at,
Sure.
or laughed at, or what that feels like to be the person, or rather treated as if the thing that is being scorned, stared at, frowned upon. And then there's the flip side though of it, which is that when one is not somebody that others stare at and point at and shun, that in childhood, again, thinking about being with my mum and holding her hand and staring at somebody with facial disfigurement, for example,
Sure.
being told not to stare, it's rude, or being taken to the side and explained that a child in the year below had been born that way, a
Sure.
child with a small arm, explain to you that it's so hurtful to be discussed. It's so hurtful for the person that I might be disgusted by to
Yeah.
notice my disgust, that we sort of train out
Sure. My
something.
you know, my niece is cerebral palsy, blind, walks with a cane, and she graduated from elementary school yesterday, and she was the last person across the stage, and the whole place gave her a standing ovation. Now, they did this because they like her because they've known her for years.
Yeah.
But somebody else on the street might say, "Oh, that poor child," you know what I mean? Like having to walk with a cane, or all kinds of things, right? Um, I think that I think resistance generally comes from fear.
Yeah.
You know, it's in the examples that you're giving here. It's like we don't want to be these people. So therefore, we're resistant to even acknowledging that these people exist.
Is there something in this that we seek to fix? You and I speak from this
Sure.
position always of enormous privilege.
Of course.
Do we
I,
think
I,
that we're some kind of savior, that we're going to swoop in and
I think part of the disgust and frustration comes from the fact that we know that it can't be fixed. If it was, oh, Sandy got really bad hair color last time or something like that, or somebody got a bad haircut, or somebody's wearing an ugly colored skirt or whatever it is, I'm their friend. I'm going to go tell them that that doesn't look good on them or whatever it is, and we can fix that. That can change. Somebody who has a small arm because of a congenital defect, there's nothing they can do about that. And that's what kind of makes it so inevitable, right? It's like, which is scary in its own way. Ooh, what's that?
Mark Quinn, the sculptor? It's his head. It's a perfect cast of his head.
Okay.
It's actually cast in his blood.
Oh, that's pretty gross. After he died, I'm assuming.
No?
Oh, he pulled enough blood out of himself to cast a thing of his head?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. How did he congeal the blood? Do you know how they did it?
I don't know the exact technical process that has
I
been
would like
followed.
to, I'll have to look that up. You'll have to send it to me.
Again, there's lots of
Um,
stuff written about this piece of work. It's a really well-known piece of sculpture.
that's a good idea.
Well, it's also at once fascinating and repelling.
Yeah,
It's got so much going in it, going for it, going against it. Um, that the initial thing is that it's something of death, and of course that's the ultimate fear. So we may be disgusted from the point of view of believing this to be almost like a death mask.
hmm
Um, that it's also so lifelike, plays, I think, on our insecurity about the fragility of life as well. And then when we know it's blood, I mean, blood is a bodily fluid. To many people is actually quite disgusting. I've seen lots of children in first aid keeling over at the sight of their own blood.
sure.
Um,
You yourself were bleeding 2 nights ago.
but instead I was keeling over from fear of the rat, not
Yeah.
my blood. Um, is there disgust for this? Are you resistant to it?
No, but I could see how somebody would be. I don't like blood. I've fainted when I've cut my hands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Getting blood taken, I have to look the other way, that kind of thing. So I do have a vagal, whatever the hell it is, bad nerve that makes me pass out.
Yeah.
But something like this, no. In fact, I think it's quite clever.
Ooh, clever.
Yeah. I could also see somebody seeing this as like, one shade down from Piss Christ. You know what I'm saying? Like
I
somebody
was going to say
saying,
it has Serrano-esque
yeah, right.
overtones.
Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, it is a cast of me made out of me.
yeah. But there are lots
That's
of people working in these ways. The people that come to mind when I look at this are sculptors again, actually, the Chapman brothers with their strange hybrid creatures that, have multiple arms, legs, heads,
sure.
genitals. And they are grotesque. There's also a photograph. In fact, I'm surprised I didn't actually put it in. And I think it's an AI image of what is a sort of hybrid of dog person with
Yeah.
dog people babies suckling.
Yeah, that would be disturbing.
And there's something really, we're kind of into the uncanny valley territory here, aren't we? Where
Sure.
something's recognizable, but it's also different than what we know it should be.
Well,
And
I
I
think
think,
it's kind of like the Geiger alien thing where like a mouth comes out of the mouth. It's like, stuff that just is wrong. So therefore it irks us.
but I'm also wondering what is wrong.
Well, again, I think that that is all just because we are this way, we see us as normal. But what does that mean? Who knows?
Mm.
You know?
Anyway, does disgust feed itself or stop itself?
I think you could do both or either.
Well, yes, of course, Bill. That's the short answer. Haven't you learned anything yet?
I do think though that I think the things that upset us the most, that we're the most resistant to in this way, I mean, really tend to be our own biggest fears,
Well, I
Um,
think that ties in with the very last question. What is the closest relationship to disgust?
yeah, I think that that is dependent on the person.
But it's fear.
Yeah,
And actually, sometimes we're just most disgusted by the people who love us the most.
sure.
There's something on the edge of disgust and disdain and resistance to those who really love us.
Yes, I'm dealing with a little of that myself.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's also a little bit of rebellion in here. Like, it's funny. It's like in Star Wars, the resistance and the rebellion, it's like it's all merged into one. It's pushing against what you know to differentiate yourself.
Is there a person that you've encountered in your life who you've been utterly resistant to?
Yes, but they're going to remain nameless. Um, sure. I, but whether I am rightful in my resistance or whether my resistance is holding me back is a whole other level of questions.
Really, is it functional?
Yes, just as fear is, as fight or flight is, as love is.
Mm.
All of these
It,
things
is there an
became
overlap in disgust and love?
around the backside of the moon. Yes, maybe. I would say that they're opposites, but I don't think so. I think somewhere in the back they merge into each other.
I was reading a very interesting post by someone that I follow avidly on Instagram, Lauren Ohanian.
Mm-hmm.
She's a yoga teacher, a movement practitioner, and she's, I guess, like a kind of body positivity activist that, in one way, diminishes her, belittles what she does. What she does is vital. Um, she teaches us that our bodies are beautiful. Now that sounds obvious, but it really is about breaking taboos and social conditions, particularly around the female body, and especially in relationship with the hypersexualization of female form and the consumption or overconsumption of images that teach us that our post birth bellies or our labias or our lopsided breasts or whatever it might be, that those things are absolutely to be celebrated in their natural glory, that they are part of the vessels of all life, and amazing things,
Sure.
amazing messaging. Anyway, she wrote something on Instagram yesterday, the day before, and it's called A Love Letter to My Daughter. And she writes a letter to her daughter in which she describes the feeling of being embraced by her now 18-year-old daughter, and the sensation of her daughter's warm embrace and her kind of breasts pushing into her. And people went wild in the comments, accusing her of being a paedophile, that it was not just cringeworthy, although lots of people said it was cringe, but that it was, kind of fundamentally wrong
Hmm.
to kind of witness the body of your child in a way that, in their minds, sexualized it.
Sure.
And I was reading these comments, and I was reading Lauren's responses to the comments, which of course were excellent and in themselves telling of her deep intelligence. And it struck me that, we're resistant to our own bodies. And we're taught to be resistant to our own bodies. And what's really sick in our society is that we're taught to be disgusted by the bodies of our fellow humans so much that we can't deal with our dead ourselves.
Hmm.
We can't bathe naked in front of each other.
Sure.
We have no, in the West, we have no real relationship to our nudity being something that is absolutely normal, the most normal thing.
Hmm.
It's just, I thought I'd mention it.
Yeah.
And if anyone's interested, to go and look her up on Instagram, because her messages are, in my opinion, very positive, nourishing messages of
Sure.
whatever the opposite is of disgust.
I've known couples that can't use the bathroom without the door closed, you know, like they've never been in the bathroom at the same time, kind of thing, which I just find silly after decades of being with somebody, you know what I mean, that you've never seen them pee, like it's but it's, some people have these things. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I remember watching Sex in the City and realizing that Charlotte would never, ever do a number two in
yeah,
the house of a boyfriend.
yeah,
And thinking how distant we must be from ourselves if this is our behavior.
yeah. Yeah, it's a weird thing. The lessons that we learn.
What's the opposite of disgust, Bill? Of
Love.
resistance? Love, yeah. Anyway, on that most lovely note, I
Hmm.
hope to see you next week.
I'd love to be here.
Bye, Bill.
Bye.